Ash had always considered himself a decisive man. Normally, he made choices quickly and confidently. Yet this time, he found himself stuck, weighing a decision that refused to settle easily in his mind. When the company he worked for suddenly collapsed, the job market was already weak. Weeks passed with Ash searching for work, but every opportunity seemed to slip through his fingers. The frustration of sitting at home without progress was beginning to wear on him. That was when his wife, Sarana, proposed an idea. "There's an opening at my office," she said casually one evening. Sarana often referred to the business as her office, although technically it belonged to her parents. They lived in India and had entrusted her with managing the European branch of their publishing company. Her job involved overseeing the rights and royalties for Indian authors whose books were published across the UK and parts of Europe. From Ash's perspective, the business sounded straightforward and profitable. Once contracts were signed with the authors, the money flowed in steadily. He almost accepted the offer immediately, but he paused. "What's the catch?" he asked. "Well," Sarana began carefully, "the position would be as my personal assistant. Mel, my current PA, is going on maternity leave, and the replacement I hired just backed out." Ash hesitated. Working directly under his wife felt awkward. On top of that, he couldn't shake the thought that being a PA was typically a woman's job. He knew it was a stereotype, but it was still how he had seen things in most offices. Sarana continued when he didn't respond. "Second," she added, "I don't think it would look right if my husband was openly my subordinate. I'm strict at work. Fair, but demanding." "So you'd rather I refuse?" Ash asked. "Not exactly," she replied. "It just means you'd need to be disguised." Ash frowned. "And third," she said. He nodded automatically. "Stop nodding," Sarana interrupted. "You haven't even heard the last part." Ash sat silently. "I've always had a female PA," she explained. "So if you take the job, you'd need to present yourself as one." Ash nearly choked. "That's impossible," he protested. "Well," Sarana replied calmly, "being unemployed isn't exactly working either." Her tone softened. "I really think you could pull it off." Ash still looked doubtful. "What about when we travel abroad?" he asked. "My passport says I'm a man." "You know I rarely travel," she said. "And when I do, someone needs to keep the office running here. You'd be perfect for that." That part made sense. Sarana's trips were rare, and the office was small. Only 4 other employees besides her PA. Ash knew that if he took the job seriously, he could handle the administrative and finance work easily. Managing things while Sarana was away wouldn't be a problem either. But pretending to be a woman? That was something else entirely. Still, he had always believed that success sometimes required unusual sacrifices. "Give me until tomorrow evening," he said finally. Sarana nodded. "I need an answer by then," she replied. The next day, Sarana came home late, clearly irritated after a difficult day at work. She waited until they were seated at dinner before bringing the subject up again. "Well," she asked. Ash sighed. "I'm leaning towards saying yes," he admitted. "But I'm worried I'll look ridiculous." Sarana's face brightened. "Oh, sweetheart," she said. "I wouldn't throw you into the deep end. I'll teach you everything you need to know." She explained that she would help him learn how to present himself convincingly as a woman. Clothes, posture, mannerisms, everything. "I'll buy whatever you need," she said. "But first you'll need to come to the office next week and train with Mel before she leaves." Ash still looked uncertain. "I can make you look completely believable," Sarana continued confidently. "You're not overly tall, which helps. As long as you stay confident and focus on your work, no one will question it." Ash wasn't fully convinced, but he agreed. A small voice in his mind warned that this might be some elaborate setup. Still, he told himself that if it was a trick, he'd spot it eventually. After all, recognizing traps was part of surviving in business. 3.5 weeks later, Ash wondered if he had lost his mind. Sarana had thrown herself into preparing him for the role. She suggested that he choose a woman he could model his new identity after. Surprisingly, Ash didn't pick a celebrity or actress. Instead, he mentioned a woman he had known during university. Her name was Purnima. That name soon became the identity he would use. Sarana liked it immediately. Since the name meant full moon, she thought it sounded gentle and feminine, perfect for the sweet, soft-spoken assistant she imagined. At first, Ash felt embarrassed every time she called him Purnima, but after weeks of training, he found himself slowly getting used to it. To Sarana's surprise, he adapted quickly.
His posture changed.
His movements became more graceful. Even small habits, how he walked, sat, or handled objects, began to look naturally feminine. They had built an entire wardrobe together: blouses, skirts, shoes, and undergarments. Makeup was still a challenge for him, but practice helped. Ash was also growing his hair, although for now a wig would complete the look. In the beginning, the Purnima persona only appeared during practice sessions. As soon as training ended, Ash returned to his usual self. But over time, Sarana noticed something interesting. He no longer rushed to remove his makeup or change out of his skirt the moment training ended. Once, she even told him that as Purnima, he looked almost 5 years younger. Ash blushed when she said it. She wasn't sure if it was modesty or embarrassment, but appearing younger would certainly help him fit into the role. The Saturday before his training week at the office began, Sarana decided it was time for a test. Purnima's first appearance in public. They went to a quiet cafe for lunch. Ash, now dressed as Purnima, felt absolutely terrified. Sarana reassured him gently. "You look like any other woman," she said. "No one will notice." Purnima was dressed simply: a soft gray wool top with long sleeves, a chocolate brown skirt that fell just below the knees, and black calf-length boots with flat heels. Nothing flashy, just an ordinary young woman enjoying lunch. And that, Sarana explained with a smile, was exactly the point. Sura had purchased a set of modest B-cup breast forms, choosing them carefully so that Purnima wouldn't attract unnecessary attention. At first, stepping out in public felt painfully awkward. Purnima expected people to stare, whisper, or react in some obvious way. But after a short time, she realized Sura had been right. There were the occasional second glances from passing men, but nothing more than that. No suspicious looks, no uncomfortable reactions. The world simply carried on around her. Sura's confidence hadn't been empty bravado after all, and some of that confidence began to rub off on Purnima. By the time they returned home, she felt unexpectedly proud of herself. "You know, Rue," she said with a grin, using her nickname for Sarana, "this might actually work." "I told you it would," Sura replied calmly. "But don't get too comfortable yet. The office will be different. Everyone will be in close quarters every day. There won't be much room for mistakes." Purnima nodded. "One more thing," Sura continued. "I'll be going in early on Monday. Mel doesn't need you there until 10, so you'll have to travel on your own." Purnima stiffened slightly. "And don't drive," Sura added. "Your Audi would look ridiculous for a PA. Besides, parking is limited." She paused before adding another condition. "And this applies every day. I don't want anyone at the office figuring out that we live together. It's better for both of us if they don't." For a moment, Purnima felt a flicker of panic at the idea of going out alone. But then she remembered the cafe trip and the way nothing unusual had happened. Sura noticed the brief hesitation. Purnima nodded again to show she understood. "Good girl," Sarana said approvingly. On Monday morning, Purnima took a taxi to the office. It was a luxury she knew she couldn't afford every day, but it helped steady her nerves for the first visit. When the car stopped outside the small office building, she stepped out and paused for a moment. This was her final chance to back out. If she left now, she could still avoid the entire situation, though Sarana would certainly be furious. Swallowing her nerves, Purnima straightened her posture and walked to the door with more confidence than she truly felt. She pressed the buzzer. A moment later, the door opened. "You must be Purnia?" Mel asked with a friendly smile. "Please call me Nima," she replied. They exchanged a polite handshake and some light introductions. Sura was inside her office finishing a phone call, so Mel led Nima through the workspace. When Sarana finished the call, Mel brought Nima in for a quick greeting. Nima expected a short conversation. Instead, she was immediately met with a detailed list of expectations: what was acceptable behavior, what wasn't, how the office functioned, and what standards Sarana demanded. Any hope that their working relationship might be relaxed quickly disappeared. After the lecture finally ended, Nima escaped back to Mel's desk. "Is she always like that?" she whispered. Mel laughed. "That's actually a good day."
Really?
"No," Mel admitted with a grin. "I'm joking. She can be intense when things are busy, but she's fair. Everyone here helps each other out when things get stressful." "That's good to know," Nima said with a smile. "There's one other thing," Mel added quietly. "Sarena likes to set little challenges or tests for people sometimes. If she gives you one, take it seriously. If you ignore it, she'll get annoyed." Nima almost replied that it sounded exactly like her, but she caught herself just in time. Later that morning, Mel introduced Nima to the rest of the team. Tom and Anil worked in sales. Both looked to be somewhere in their late 20s or early 30s. Sarath handled contracts. He was older, with the weary expression of someone who had spent years analyzing fine print and legal details. Then there was Vari, from finance. Her age was difficult to guess, perhaps late 30s, but she carried the quiet, reserved air typical of many accountants. Nima introduced herself using the backstory she and Sarena had carefully planned. "Hi, I'm Nima," she said. "I studied accountancy and worked in finance for a couple of years, but eventually realized it wasn't really what I wanted long-term. Around that time, a family friend mentioned Sarena needed someone here quickly, so I sent my CV." She smiled politely. "I've always been curious about publishing, so I thought this would be a good opportunity to see if it's the sort of industry I want to grow in." During her second week, Nima received an unusual email from Sarena. It was odd because Sarena's office door was open only a few meters away. Normally, she only sent emails like that when she was on a phone call. The subject line read, "Read me now." Nima opened the message. There was only a single sentence. "By dinner tonight, prepare a list of the good things and bad things about working as a woman." Nima immediately glanced around the room, irrationally worried someone might be reading over her shoulder. She closed the email. This wasn't a casual question.
It was clearly some kind of test.
She also noticed the wording carefully. Sarena had written working as a woman, not working as Nima. That meant the answer wasn't supposed to be about the job itself. All day, Nima added notes to a sheet of paper. Some ideas stayed. Others were scratched out. By the time the office closed, she had a list, though she wasn't entirely confident about it. That evening, when she arrived home, Sarena surprised her. "Change back quickly," she said. "We're going out for dinner." Ash had been so immersed in the role of Nima that shifting back took longer than expected, and Sarena was already impatient by the time he was ready. "Got your list?" she asked as they left. Ash nodded. They walked to a nearby Italian restaurant they often visited. Sarena quietly noticed that Ash still had some of Nima's gestures, small feminine habits he hadn't fully dropped. She didn't mention it. At one point, she casually hung her handbag over his arm. He blinked in surprise, then laughed and handed it back. After that, he kept his arms stiffly at his sides. When dessert arrived, Sarena leaned forward. "So," she said casually, "are we ready to review your list?" Ash looked around nervously before answering. "Yes." "Good," she whispered dramatically. "Let's start with the positives." Ash read from the list. "First, I liked the attention my wife gave me while teaching me everything." Sarena smirked. "I like that answer," she said, though it sounded a little too flattering. "Second, hosiery. Especially tights. They feel great." "Interesting," Sarena said thoughtfully. "Third, earrings. I like wearing them, especially the slightly dangling ones." "I suspected that," she said. "You always seem fascinated by them." "And fourth, everyone at work has been kind to me." Sarena nodded approvingly. "Now the negatives." Ash cleared his throat. "First, makeup takes too long." "True," she said. "Second, I sometimes feel like people on the bus are staring because they might realize who I am." "You're imagining that," she replied calmly. Ash hesitated before reading the final item. "Third, I worry that my wife might secretly look down on me for doing this." For a long moment, Sarena said nothing. The silence was only broken when the waitress arrived with their desserts. "I appreciate your honesty," Sarena said quietly. But she didn't deny his concern. Months later, Nima returned home one evening to find Sarana furious about something unexpected. If the capable boss of a company turns out to be nothing more than a ruthless tyrant, Nima said lightly, and the employees finally rise up and overthrow her, then I suppose I'd support the rebellion. Just as she finished speaking, George's mother walked into the shop carrying a stack of freshly folded clothes in her arms. "Oh dear," she said sympathetically, glancing at Nima. "Did the boss give you a telling off today?" Before Nima could even respond, the woman's eyes moved slowly over her outfit. "Actually," she added with a knowing smile, "never mind. I can already see the answer." "Hello, Mrs. Clesidu," Nima replied with a small sigh. "Yes, I suppose you could say I got into trouble." "What happened?" the older woman asked curiously. Nima didn't answer right away. Instead, she stared at the bright red smear of lipstick left on the rim of her coffee cup. After a moment, she spoke quietly. "Sometimes," she said, "if you want to get ahead in business, you have to be willing to do whatever you're asked." She gave a faint, amused smile. "But every now and then, you discover that it takes a lot more time and effort than you ever expected."